afternoon, good morning. I'm not sure what time it is, everybody. It's good day. My name is Adrienne Haynes. I'm glad to be here. As Ade is getting my presentation up, I'm just going to share a few maps, and we will share them in groups of two. And I will explain during my presentation what these are and how we're using them in the communities that I'm working in. All right. My name is Adrienne Haynes. I am an entrepreneur and attorney based in Kansas City, Missouri. I have the great privilege of knowing Ade because we are both innovators and residents at the Kaufman Foundation. Through our Innovator in Residence Fellowship, the Kaufman Foundation asked us to consider the work that we were doing and to do a review of the systemic challenges that we had seen in our work and to try to propose an uncommon solution. So, I had been running an incubator and I was noticing some interesting challenges and opportunities with that. And I, through this fellowship, decided to just do some additional research into incubators and some of the limitations, but also opportunities I had seen. Through that work, I stumbled across innovation districts, which you all here in Silicon Valley are probably intimately familiar with. But they are geographic regions that have a real intentional mix of educational institutions, financial institutions, research institutions, etc., and put in really close proximity with startups, business owners, incubators, accelerators, those kind of activities or spaces where people can really have those creative collisions. These innovation districts did all these fantastic things that I thought would also be really useful in the urban core where I had been running an incubator, including things like increasing economic activity, increasing job opportunities, sharing opportunities and learnings that had come up, using tax revenues to go back to the region, and really just kind of connecting people in a more strategic way. Because the incubator that I ran, if you know anything about Kansas City, you may have heard of Troost, which is our historic economic dividing line, actually a racial dividing line in our city that experienced a lot of redlining on the east side of Troost and has really resulted in an area of our city, a big part of our city that has experienced just historic, long-lasting economic disinvestment. And so I was running an incubator 15 blocks east of Troost, perhaps one of the first incubators that have been run on that side of the city. And we were specifically working with construction contractors. So helping construction contractors make that shift from contractor to I am a business person who runs a construction firm. And really trying to help create jobs and opportunities through that kind of analysis. So what I found at the incubator that was really exciting, I ran it for 3 years. We had all these great economic metrics that we had recorded and were success metrics, but one thing that I noticed and was intimately familiar with was that while we were doing great things at the incubator, we were in the heart of the city, and it was probably a capacity issue, but we didn't have or didn't take the time to say to the people right across the street, hey, do you have a construction business? Might you need some help? Here's some resources that we're offering just right across the street. And so as I began to explore innovation districts, I realized that through the Brookings Institute research, they had quoted all these fantastic things that an innovation district could create, but that the hindsight challenges included innovation, inclusion, and place. So when I read that, I realized it was probably an opportunity to perhaps flip the model of an innovation district on its head, to allow community members to really be able to go through a process for them to better articulate what they had and how they could use those existing assets to benefit the community. Let's see if I can make this a little bit easier to review. Okay, so, sorry about that. So what I found was the Brookings Institute had outlined 3 different types of innovation districts, really based on where they were located in the city. And so through my fellowship program, I have proposed a 4th type of innovation district, one that is designed first by community members. And our goal is to co-design a model really that prioritizes the voice, the existing opportunities that already exist in a region, that helps the community members measure and aid in the development of those existing assets, that really builds relationships through some strategic meetings, and really bringing people together that might not be on the same power profile, that might exist in a neighborhood, and then really being able to show those wins that say, hey, when we work together and when we empower community members who are already here, that if you give them the right mix of tools, access, resources, and support, they can probably come up with their own solutions, ones that may be more long-lasting. Okay. So I'll jump to the maps that are in front of you just for timing's sake. So what we did was we said, okay, let's open this pilot program up to 3 communities here in our neighborhood or in our city that might be willing to go through this 9-month pilot program that allows us to put together a community council, so a group of 7 to 15 people that work, live, play, own, or worship in that district that would be interested in getting together over a series of months to eat dinner and to really kind of go over these curriculums that we had created, which I'll also pass out for you to see. When you look at the Innovation District work, it always starts with an in-depth asset mapping process. The interesting part about what you see in the research, if you're really looking, is that asset mapping usually happens by external partners. Internal community members are usually not involved, at least not intimately. So external parties are looking for these specific things that actually fuel an innovation ecosystem. And one of the things I realized was that it was what Innovation District consultants were sharing was that it was easier to not engage the community because often an Innovation District can be a real estate play. So you don't want people to hold out on keeping their properties when you want to, create a 2 square mile, area of innovation. So we did some in-depth asset mapping. We've been very intentional about relationship and partner development. And then we're encouraging community members with this new set of information to consider the innovation that's possible in their region. So the maps that I gave you were the maps that we have gone over in the Washington-Wheatley neighborhood. So just really quickly, on that top sheet, we're working in 3 different regions. So we're working along Independence Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri, which is one of our most diverse business districts. There's about, I think, over 100 languages that are spoken along Independence Avenue. We're working in Washington-Wheatley, which is the map set that you have in front of you, which is a small urban core neighborhood just east of downtown, about 3 miles east. And then we're also working in Kansas City, Kansas, which is in Wyandotte County. It's it is also another region of our area that has seen some historic disinvestment. So that top map is our base map. It also includes opportunity zone overlays, which we can have a whole conversation about that, but about the fact that we were educating the residents and our members of our community council sometimes that they were even in an innovation district, in an opportunity zone. And we know that external parties, investors have been looking at these regions very intentionally, and sometimes the people that live there don't even realize that they're in these zones. So with a fantastic group of GIS students from UMKC, we've been developing these maps, and we're doing them with several different processes because we want it to be real community participatory research. We want the assets and the capitals that we're mapping to be defined by the community so they can begin to see, hey, in these regions that we've said we might not have anything here, when you look at the innovation map, if you kind of look through a little bit, you'll see one that says Washington-Wheatley Innovation District. This was our final asset map for Washington-Wheatley that says, okay, given these 10 capitals that we've identified in a region, here's where they might exist in your neighborhood. And then we're going through in our meetings, we're mapping those, we're trying to figure out how they might relate with one another. We're bringing in partners like the land bank and the city manager's office and city planning and development to also review the maps with the community council members and really begin to allow community members to participate in a more sophisticated conversation about their region that says, here's what actually exists here, here are the development or real estate incentives that others may be able to use to do work in our region. And it really has been a fun process to allow community members to have that kind of ownership and real self-awareness of now what they have. I would say one of the most interesting comments that has come out when we were looking at the Independence Avenue region, which I'll scroll down to show you. Sorry about this PowerPoint. It's a little bit small, but Independence Avenue, when you look at it, you might look through and you would consider it to be just another east side neighborhood in Kansas City. Like on its face, it looks like there's been some deterioration. Looks like there could be some real facade improvement needed. And when we shared this map, the final map with the members of the community council, some were beaming ear to ear because they said, hey, with these maps, no one can ever tell us that nothing exists here anymore. So it really allowed them to see their own regions in a renewed way, which I think allows for a better conversation when we're talking to elected officials, developers, etc. So it has been almost a 2-year process of developing this fellowship and really being able to produce these maps. And so I have much more to share, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.